Okay, let's go over layout a little bit. Now, layout uses floating, or most options do. You've learned floating. You definitely use floating right away. Use it now. Get those photos floated into your website. Lots of photos. What about um, absolute positioning? Well, you might use that. Probably not, but you could try it. Your navigation needed floating. You're definitely going to use that. Get navigation into your site right away, into your resume site right away. Layout, are you going to use layout? You might, if you want to make multiple columns, for sure. Otherwise, maybe not. I'd say only about 25% of the students who do these projects use layout. But anyway, let's look at some general information. And this is important to know in any case. You should know that there's different types of layouts, and read about these in your text. You should have read the layout chapter in your text at this point. Fixed layout, set at a specific pixel width, regardless of the browser size. Fluid or liquid layout, it resizes proportionally with the browser. Elastic layout, it's a more complicated way of resizing based on the size of the text. And hybrid layouts, it just means any combination of fixed and fluid or flexible. Any combination of those things. And actually, hybrid layouts are quite common. We have a few things that are fixed, especially smaller things in size, and then the whole page flexes in general. So fixed is easier, though, in some ways, because it's easier to sometimes think about hard units, exactly what size things are, as opposed to thinking about percentages. It says most of the web is fixed, and that certainly was the case a couple of years ago. I don't know these days what the proportion is. So many people have transformed their websites into flexible sites. Within the last year, the SUNY Plattsburgh one did, although a lot of internal pages are not very flexible. Fluid avoids empty space, horizontal scroll, less predictable. Line length is a problem, maybe harder to compose. Fluid sites are flexible sites. In other words, if the photo gets a lot bigger, you have to have that option. It could mean your plan as far as white space doesn't work out quite as well. Line length, it's a big thing. So you usually have to set minimum and maximum sizes, because you don't want a paragraph to turn out to be just one enormously long line when a screen gets really wide on some enormous monitor. Hybrids, it depends on how you do it. It may be harder to combine these different methods. Elastic is tougher for sure. Read about it in your text, but I don't think you're going to use it. Not in your resume for sure. You're probably going to have a little bit of flexible and a little bit of fixed in your resume. So we're going to do an exercise in just a minute. We're going to use a wrapper div. Now we call it wrapper just because that's the convention. It just means a big div that goes around everything. It's not everything. The body is everything that's displayed, but it's just inside the body. It's a way to get another container around things. We're going to set the wrapper div to the total width of the page, right? And then we center that. This is the way we do fixed center. And then we center it. Once we get that size set on a wrapper div, we can center it, and then we get our margins because it's what's left over. And then we can split up the page based on pixels, accounting for margins, borders, and padding. So you can read about that, those pages. Fluid centered, and our pages are almost always centered these days. You might still use a wrapper, especially if you want to put a different color behind things, right? So that's why another reason you might use a wrapper. You can use the body and set it overall margins, center with something like margins of about 1%. You may have already done this to your page, percent margins on the left and right. That is a fluid or flexible way of setting margins. The widths for individual things within are set in percentages. You might use some pixels in EM for padding and borders. And then some divs may have no width, allowing them to expand all the way. And then hybrid, it could be, who knows what it means. It means just a combination of things. You use some of the others. And then I think you could read more. There's a lot more about layout. Layout can get a lot more complicated. Positioned layouts, faux columns, and more. Read about these in the chapter. I don't think you can use them right now, but it's good to know about them.